Captain Marcus Reed crouched behind the metal crate and checked his oxygen levels. The reading showed 60% remaining. His team of 4 soldiers had been moving through the Catherian mining facility for 3 hours, and they still had not found what they came for. The planet Viridia 7 looked beautiful from space with its purple skies and silver mountains, but the air here could kill a human in minutes. The Catherians had built this place 6 months ago, and since then 3 human colonies had gone silent. Each colony had over 50,000 people, and now they were all dead. The report said it happened fast. People just started falling down and never got back up. The medical teams that went to investigate also died within hours. Something on this planet was being used as a weapon, and Reed needed to find out what. Sergeant Tom Blake moved up beside him and pointed toward the main processing center. Through the thick glass walls, they could see alien figures in white environmental suits operating massive machines. The Catherians looked like tall insects with 4 arms and heads that moved in ways that made humans feel sick. Their suits covered them completely because even they could not breathe this air safely. "The readings are strongest from that building," Blake whispered through the comm system. "Whatever they are making, it is coming from there." Reed nodded and signaled to the other 2 members of his team. Private Amy Foster was their explosives expert, and Corporal Jake Williams handled communications. They had trained for this mission for weeks, but nothing could really prepare them for being on an alien world where the air itself was poison. The team moved carefully between the storage containers and processing equipment. Reed could see that the Catherians had been very busy. The facility was much larger than their intelligence reports had indicated. Conveyor belts carried strange purple material from the mining sites into the processing center. Robotic arms sorted and packaged the material into sealed containers. Everything was automated because biological workers could not survive here. As they got closer to the main building, Reed noticed something growing on the walls. It looked like fungus, but it was darker than anything he had seen on Earth. The growth covered large sections of the facility walls and seemed to pulse with a faint light. His scanner immediately started beeping with warning signals about dangerous biological material. "Captain," Foster said quietly, "these readings are off the charts. Whatever this stuff is, it would kill us in seconds if our suits were breached." Reed studied the fungus more carefully. It had a complex structure with multiple layers and tiny spores that drifted in the air like deadly snow. This had to be connected to what happened to the colonies. The Catherians were harvesting this biological material and somehow using it as a weapon. They reached the entrance to the processing center, and Williams began working on the electronic lock. His tools interfaced with the alien technology, and after several tense minutes, the door opened with a soft hiss. The team moved inside, and immediately their environmental suits began registering even higher levels of toxic compounds. The interior of the building was like nothing Reed had ever seen. Massive tanks filled with liquid held concentrated versions of the fungus. Mechanical systems extracted spores and processed them into what looked like weapons. There were launching devices that could fire spore containers across vast distances. This was definitely a biological weapons facility. "They are not just mining here," Blake said as he examined one of the launching systems. "They are preparing to attack more human worlds." Reed moved to a control console and tried to access the alien computer systems. The data was encrypted, but Williams managed to break through some of the basic security. What they found made Reed's blood run cold. The screen showed star maps with dozens of human colonies marked as targets. The Catherians were planning to wipe out humanity using the biological weapons they had developed on this planet. Suddenly, alarms began blaring throughout the facility. Red lights flashed, and Reed could hear the sound of many footsteps approaching their location. "They have been discovered. We need to get out of here now," Reed ordered his team. But as they reached the exit, they found their path blocked by 20 Catherian soldiers in environmental suits. The aliens carried energy weapons and had surrounded the building. "General." Voss stepped forward and spoke through a translation device. "Human intruders, you are now prisoners of the Catherian Empire. Your species will soon join the others we have eliminated." Reed and his team raised their weapons, but they were badly outnumbered. The firefight that followed was intense but brief. Energy blasts lit up the facility as both sides exchanged fire. During the battle, Reed's environmental suit was damaged by a near miss that tore through the chest area. He could feel the poisoned air beginning to seep into his suit, according to everything. Reed knew about this planet he should be dead within minutes. The toxic compounds in the air were supposed to shut down human organs almost instantly. But he kept fighting and moving, and somehow he felt fine. His scanner was screaming warnings about atmospheric contamination, but his body was not reacting the way it should. As his team fought to reach an escape route, Reed noticed that the wall beside him was covered with the dark fungus he had seen outside. Without really thinking about what he was doing, he broke off a piece of the growth. It felt spongy and warm in his hands. The logical part of his mind told him this was insane, but something deeper made him put the fungus in his mouth and swallow it. General Voss watched through his visor as the human consumed what should have been the most deadly substance on the planet. His soldiers stopped firing for a moment because they could not believe what they were seeing. The human had just eaten concentrated death and was still standing. Reed used the moment of confusion to signal his team. They threw smoke grenades and moved toward the emergency exit. As they ran, Reed felt strange but not sick. The fungus had a bitter taste, but his stomach was not rejecting it. His damaged suit was letting in more poisoned air with each breath, but his lungs continued to work normally. The team escaped through a maintenance tunnel and made it back to their hidden landing site. As they flew away from the facility, Reed looked back at the purple planet where something impossible had happened. He had consumed a biological weapon that killed entire worlds and somehow survived. "Captain, your suit readings show massive contamination," Foster said with worry in her voice. "We need to get you to medical immediately." But Reed felt surprisingly good. He was hungry and thirsty and ready to file his mission report. The Catherians had a biological weapons program that threatened all human life in the galaxy. But they had also shown Reed something they probably did not intend to reveal. Their ultimate weapon might not be as ultimate as they believed. General Voss stood in the damaged facility and tried to understand what he had witnessed. His science teams would analyze every second of recorded footage, but he already knew they would find no explanation. A human had consumed their most potent biological creation and lived. The war against humanity had just become much more complicated. The news of what happened on Viridia 7 spread through human space faster than any official report could travel. Captain Reed had been taken to the medical bay aboard the research vessel Prometheus, where Dr. Elena Vasquez ran every test she could think of. The results made no sense according to everything known about human biology and alien toxins. "Your blood shows traces of compounds that should have killed you 3 times over," Dr. Vasquez told Reed as she reviewed the test results for the 5th time. "But instead of poisoning you, these substances seem to have been broken down and absorbed by your system." Reed sat on the examination table feeling better than he had in months. The fungus he had eaten on Viridia 7 had tasted awful, but somehow his body had processed it without any problems. Even more strange was that he actually wanted to eat more of it. His body seemed to crave the very thing that should have destroyed him. Meanwhile, on the Catherian homeworld of Kythos Prime Emperor, Thane gathered his top scientists and military commanders to discuss the impossible human. The recorded footage from Viridia 7 had been analyzed by their best experts, but none could explain what they had witnessed. "The human consumed concentrated spores from the death fungus and survived," reported Chief Scientist Dr. Kane. "Our calculations show that even the smallest amount should have caused complete organ failure within 60 seconds. General Voss added his own concerns about the mission. The human showed no signs of distress after ingesting the biological weapon. If anything, he seemed to become more active and alert during the following combat. Emperor Thane studied the footage again. The human had deliberately broken off a piece of the fungus and eaten it without hesitation. This suggested either incredible bravery or knowledge that he would survive. Neither possibility was comforting for the Catherian Empire. Back on the Prometheus Dr. Vasquez was making discoveries that would change how humans understood their own species. She had been researching the biological weapons used against the 3 destroyed colonies and found something remarkable. In each case there had been a few human survivors who were initially missed by the rescue teams. These people were found days after the attacks living in areas with the highest concentration of toxins, she explained to Reed during their next meeting. They had somehow developed resistance to the biological weapons. Reed was interested, but not surprised. During his years as a soldier, he had seen humans adapt to many dangerous situations. What Dr. Vasquez was describing sounded like a natural human ability rather than something supernatural. Dr. Vasquez continued her research and found historical records that supported her theory. Throughout human history, there had been cases of people building tolerance to various poisons. Some ancient rulers had consumed small amounts of toxins to protect themselves from assassination attempts. Certain populations had developed resistance to local diseases and dangerous plants. "What makes you special, Captain, is not that you survived," she told Reed. "What makes you special is how quickly your body adapted. Most humans would need weeks or months to build resistance to these compounds, but you did it almost instantly." Reed thought about this while he reviewed the intelligence reports from Viridia 7. His team had managed to download significant data from the Cytherian facility before they escaped. The information painted a disturbing picture of biological warfare being conducted across multiple star systems. The Cytherians had been developing specific toxins for different alien species. Each biological weapon was designed to target the unique physiology of a particular race. Humans had been just one target among many others. The scale of their operation was massive, with weapons production facilities on dozens of worlds, but something in the data caught Reed's attention. Every biological weapon the Cytherians had created was based on naturally occurring substances found on different planets. They were not inventing new toxins, but instead concentrating and weaponizing existing biological materials. This meant that somewhere in nature there were always organisms that had learned to live with these same toxic substances. Reed requested permission to return to Viridia 7 with a larger team. His plan was ambitious and dangerous, but it might provide the key to defeating the Cytherian biological weapons program. If humans could adapt to these toxins, then maybe they could teach other species to do the same. General Voss was having similar thoughts on Kythos Prime, but from the opposite perspective. The Cytherian military had built their entire strategy around biological superiority. Their weapons could eliminate any opposition without risking their own forces. But if humans could resist these weapons, then the entire foundation of Cytherian power was threatened. "We must assume that all humans have this capability," General Voss told the War Council. "Our intelligence suggests that this Reed is not unique, but rather representative of human adaptability." Emperor Thane was troubled by this possibility. The Cytherian Empire had conquered 47 different star systems using biological warfare. If humans could not be eliminated using these methods, then the Empire would need to develop new strategies for dealing with them. Dr. Kane presented his analysis of human evolution and biology. According to his research, humans had evolved on a planet with extraordinary biological diversity. They had been exposed to thousands of different toxins and diseases over millions of years. This had created natural selection pressure for adaptability and resistance. Most species evolve specific resistances to the particular dangers in their environment, Dr. Kane explained. But humans seem to have evolved a general adaptability that allows them to resist almost any biological threat. The implications were staggering for both sides. If humans could indeed adapt to any biological weapon, then they would be immune to the primary military advantage of the Cytherian Empire. But if humans could also teach this adaptability to other species, then they could potentially liberate all the worlds the Cytherians had conquered. Reed was preparing for his mission to Viridia 7 when he received an unexpected message. The communication came through official diplomatic channels, but the content was unlike anything in the history of human-Cytherian relations. "Captain Reed, this is General Voss of the Cytherian Imperial Forces. I wish to discuss the terms of a possible meeting between our species. There are matters of mutual interest that require direct communication. Dr. Vasquez was shocked when Reed showed her the message. No Catherian had ever requested peaceful contact with humans before. Their species had been at war since first contact, 5 years earlier. The Catherians had always refused any diplomatic overtures and responded to human expansion with immediate military action. This could be a trap, Dr. Vasquez warned Reed. They might want to capture you for experimentation. But Reed was intrigued by the possibility. If the Catherians were willing to talk, then maybe there was a way to end the war without destroying either species. His survival on Viridia 7 had apparently made them reconsider their strategy. Against humanity, Reed decided to proceed with his mission to Viridia 7, but with a new objective. Instead of just gathering intelligence, he would try to establish communication with the Catherian forces. If they wanted to understand human adaptability, then he would show them exactly what humans were capable of doing. Admiral Lisa Torres stood before the holographic display showing 17 different star systems where Catherian biological attacks had occurred in the past month. Each red dot represented a world where millions of lives had been lost to alien weapons, but scattered throughout the data were small green indicators that told a different story. In every single system we have found human survivors, reported Commander David Park from the Intelligence Division. Small groups that somehow lived through attacks that killed entire planetary populations. Torres studied the data more carefully. The survivors were not random. They were mostly soldiers, miners, and colonists who had been exposed to harsh environments before the attacks. People who had already been challenged by dangerous conditions seemed better able to resist the biological weapons. Dr. Vasquez joined the briefing via secure communication from the Prometheus. Her research over the past weeks had revealed patterns. That changed everything they thought they knew about the war. Admiral, the Catherians have been using biological warfare against dozens of species for over a century, Dr. Vasquez reported. We found records of 43 different civilizations that were eliminated using these methods. Humans are the first species to show any significant resistance. The implications were staggering. The Catherian Empire had built their power by exterminating any species that might challenge them. They were not just fighting humans, but had been committing genocide across the galaxy for generations. On Kythos, Prime Emperor Thane was dealing with reports that challenged the entire foundation of his empire. The biological weapons that had made Catherian expansion possible were failing against human colonies. Worse yet, intelligence suggested that humans were somehow sharing their resistance with other species. The humans have established research facilities on 7 different worlds, General Voss reported to the Imperial Council. They appear to be studying our biological agents and developing countermeasures. Dr. Kane added his own disturbing findings. We have detected increased human activity near several of our conquered worlds. They seem to be making contact with surviving populations from species we believed we had eliminated. Emperor Thane realized that the war with humanity was becoming something far more dangerous than a territorial dispute. If humans could reverse the effects of Catherian biological weapons, then every world in the Empire might rebel. The foundation of their power was being threatened by a species they had underestimated. Captain Reed returned to Viridia 7 with a team of 12 specialists, including Dr. Vasquez and several volunteers who wanted to test human adaptability. They established a hidden base in the mountains where they could study the biological weapons facility without being detected. The team began a carefully controlled program of exposure to the toxic fungus that covered much of the planet. Dr. Vasquez monitored each person as they consumed tiny amounts of the material and gradually built resistance to its effects. Within 2 weeks, the entire team could breathe the planet's atmosphere without environmental suits. This is remarkable, Dr. Vasquez told Reed as she reviewed their progress. The human body seems capable of adapting to almost any biological threat given enough time and proper exposure. But Reed was more interested in the intelligence they were gathering about Catherian operations. His team had discovered that Viridia 7 was not just a weapons facility. but a research center where the aliens were developing new biological agents for specific target species. The facility contained detailed genetic information about hundreds of different alien races. The Catherians had been studying the biology of every species they encountered and creating customized weapons to eliminate them. It was systematic genocide conducted with scientific precision. Reed made a decision that would change the course of the war. He sent a message directly to General Voss using Catherian communication frequencies. The message was simple, but its implications were enormous. General Voss, this is Captain Reed. I am currently on Viridia 7 breathing your poisoned air and eating your biological weapons. If you want to understand how this is possible, then meet me at the coordinates I am transmitting. Come alone and unarmed, and I will show you something that will end this war. The message reached Catherian command within hours and created immediate debate among their leadership. Some viewed it as an obvious trap, while others saw it as an opportunity to finally understand human capabilities. General Voss argued for accepting the meeting. We need to know how they resist our weapons. If we cannot eliminate humans using biological warfare, then we must find another way to deal with them. Emperor Thane was reluctant to risk one of his top commanders, but he was also curious about what the human wanted to show them. The war was not going according to plan, and new information might be valuable. Dr. Vasquez was horrified when Reed told her about the message. Captain, you are offering to meet with the enemy commander on a planet where they have overwhelming military advantage? This could be suicide. But Reed was confident in his plan. Over the past weeks, he had learned to not just survive on Viridia 7, but to thrive in its toxic environment. His body had adapted so completely that he felt stronger and healthier than ever before. If the Catherians wanted to understand human adaptability, then he would give them a demonstration they would never forget. General Voss arrived at the meeting. Coordinates with a small escort, but agreed to approach Reed's position alone as requested. The human was waiting in an area where the concentration of toxic fungus was so high that it should have been lethal to any living creature. Reed was not wearing an environmental suit. He was breathing the poisoned air naturally and seemed completely comfortable in an environment that would kill a Catherian in seconds, even with full protective equipment. General Voss, thank you for coming, Reed said calmly. I wanted to show you something that your species needs to understand about humans. General Voss watched through his suit visor as Reed picked a large piece of the deadly fungus from the wall and ate it like it was ordinary food. The aliens' instruments showed massive spikes in toxin levels, but the human showed no distress whatsoever. How is this possible? General Voss asked through his translation device. Reed smiled and picked another piece of fungus. This is what humans do, General. We adapt to survive in any environment. Your biological weapons work by poisoning other species, but humans can learn to process any toxin as nutrition. The demonstration continued for an hour as Reed showed General Voss how easily humans could survive in conditions that were instantly lethal to most other species. But then Reed revealed the real purpose of the meeting. Your empire has been built on the ability to eliminate other species using biological warfare, Reed said. But humans can not only survive your weapons, we can teach other species to do the same. Every world you have conquered could be liberated if they learned what we know about adaptation. General Voss realized the implications immediately. The Catherian Empire controlled dozens of worlds by maintaining biological supremacy over conquered populations. If humans could teach resistance to these weapons, then every conquered species might rebel simultaneously. What do you propose? General Voss asked. Reed looked up at the purple sky of Viridia 7. Where both human and Catherian ships were visible in orbit. I propose that we end this war before it destroys both our species. Meet me at a neutral location where representatives from every species can witness what I am about to show you. After that demonstration, your emperor will understand why this war cannot be won through biological warfare. The abandoned space station Nexus 9 had been built decades ago as a trading post between different alien civilizations. Now it floated in the neutral zone between human and Catherian space, preparing to host the most important meeting in galactic history. Representatives from 47 different species had come to witness what Captain Reed claimed would end the war. Emperor Thane arrived with the largest Cytherian fleet ever assembled outside their home system. Over 300 warships surrounded the space station, ready to destroy it if this turned out to be some kind of human trap. The Emperor himself wore ceremonial armor and was accompanied by his most trusted advisors, including General Voss and Dr. Kane. Admiral Torres brought her own impressive fleet but kept them at a respectful distance from the Cytherian forces. She was still not entirely sure what Reed planned to do, but she trusted his judgment. The captain had proven his ability to survive impossible situations, and maybe he could find a way to save both species from a war that was becoming more destructive. Every day, inside Nexus 9, the main conference hall had been prepared for the demonstration. Medical equipment from dozens of different civilizations lined the walls, ready to monitor what was about to happen. Representatives from species that had been conquered by the Cytherians watched nervously as their former oppressors took their seats. Dr. Kane had brought a special container that held what he called the ultimate biological weapon. It was a combination of every toxic compound the Cytherians had ever developed mixed into a single deadly substance. One drop of the liquid could kill any known life form within minutes. This compound contains concentrated toxins from 37 different worlds. Dr. Kane explained to the assembled representatives. It has been tested against tissue samples from every species in this room and proven lethal in all cases. Reed stood in the center of the hall wearing simple human clothing with no protective equipment. Around him, alien doctors prepared scanning devices that would monitor his vital signs during the demonstration. Everyone expected to watch him die, but Reed seemed calm and confident. Emperor Thane spoke through the translation system that connected all the different languages represented in the room. Human, if you consume this compound, you will experience the most painful death possible. This is your final opportunity to withdraw your challenge. Reed looked around the room at representatives from species that had been terrorized by Cytherian biological weapons for generations. Some of them had lost entire homeworlds to these attacks. Today he would show them that the Empire's power was not absolute. Emperor Thane, your species has built an empire based on the fear of death, Reed replied. Today I will show everyone in this room that humans do not fear what kills others. We adapt to it. Dr. Kane approached with the container holding the ultimate biological weapon. The liquid inside was dark red and seemed to pulse with malevolent energy. Sensors throughout the room registered toxic readings that were beyond the scale of most instruments. Reed took the container and held it up so everyone could see. This represents every biological weapon your empire has ever created. You believe it makes you invincible because it can kill any living thing. He paused and looked directly at Emperor Thane. But you have never tested it against something that refuses to die. Without hesitation, Reed opened the container and drank the entire contents. The liquid was bitter and burned his throat, but he swallowed every drop. Around the room, alien representatives gasped in shock and horror. Many of them turned away, expecting to see him collapse immediately. The first few minutes were the most dangerous. Reed could feel the toxins entering his bloodstream and attacking his organs. His body began the familiar process of adaptation that he had experienced on Viridia 7, but this was far more intense. Every system in his body was working to neutralize compounds that should have been instantly lethal, the medical monitors around. The room showed readings that defied explanation. Reed's heart rate increased dramatically as his body fought against the toxins. His temperature spiked and his blood chemistry changed in ways that should have indicated multiple organ failure. But somehow his vital signs stabilized and began returning to normal. After 10 minutes, Reed was still standing. After 20 minutes, he was looking around the room with clear eyes and steady breathing. After 30 minutes, he walked over to a table where human rations had been placed and began eating normally. "I apologize for the delay," Reed said to the stunned audience. "Consuming your ultimate weapon made me quite hungry." Emperor Thane stared in disbelief at readings from his own medical instruments. Every scanner confirmed that the human had indeed consumed lethal amounts of biological weapons and was not only surviving but appeared to be processing them as nutrition. Dr. Kane was frantically checking his equipment, convinced that something must be malfunctioning. The compound Reed had consumed should have killed him dozens of times over. Yet the human was sitting casually at a table eating food and chatting with his companions as if nothing unusual had happened. "This is impossible," Dr. Kane whispered. "No living creature can survive what we just witnessed." General Voss stepped forward and addressed Reed directly. "Captain, what you have shown us changes everything we thought we knew about biological warfare. How many humans possess this ability?" Reed finished his meal and stood to address the entire assembly. "Every human has this capability, General. We are a species that adapts to survive in any environment. Your biological weapons cannot eliminate us because we learn to live with whatever tries to kill us." The implications hit Emperor Thane immediately. The Catherian Empire had spent centuries developing biological weapons that could eliminate any opposition. But if humans could not only survive these weapons but actually thrive after consuming them, then the entire foundation of imperial power was meaningless. But Reed was not finished with his demonstration. He pulled out a small device and activated a holographic display that showed star maps of the entire galaxy. Dozens of worlds controlled by the Catherian Empire were highlighted in red. "Your empire controls these worlds by threatening their populations with biological extinction," Reed continued. "But humans can teach other species to develop the same resistance we possess. We have already begun working with survivors from worlds you believed you had completely conquered." The holographic display showed research facilities that humans had established on 7 different worlds. Each facility was teaching local populations how to build resistance to Catherian biological weapons, using controlled exposure and gradual adaptation techniques. "Within 1 year, every species in this room will be immune to your biological arsenal," Reed announced. "Your empire was built on the fear of death, but that fear ends today." Emperor Thane realized that his choices were limited. The Catherian Empire could continue fighting a war they could no longer win through biological superiority, or they could find a new way to coexist with species they could no longer eliminate. Reed made one final statement that would be remembered throughout galactic history. "Emperor Thane, you can choose to be remembered as the ruler who brought genocide to the galaxy or as the leader who helped create the first truly cooperative interstellar civilization. The choice is yours, but the age of biological warfare ends." Today, the silence in the conference hall stretched for several minutes as everyone processed what they had witnessed. Then slowly, Emperor Thane rose from his seat and approached Reed. The human who had just consumed enough poison to kill a small planet was calmly waiting for his response. "Captain Reed," Emperor Thane said formally, "I believe it is time to discuss the terms of a new relationship between our species." 6 months after the demonstration at Nexus 9, the first joint human-Catherian research facility opened on Viridia 7, the planet that had once been a biological weapons production center, was now the headquarters for the Galactic Medical Defense Initiative. Dr. Elena Vasquez and Dr. Kane worked side by side in laboratories that had been converted from weapons manufacturing to life-saving research. The adaptation protocols are showing remarkable success across all tested species. Dr. Vasquez reported during the daily briefing, "We have successfully trained resistance programs for 23 different alien physiologies." Dr. Kane reviewed the data with amazement. "The human approach to biological adaptation is unlike anything in Catherian science. Instead of trying to eliminate threats, you teach your bodies to coexist with them." The research had revealed that human adaptability was not unique, but it was unusually advanced. Most species could develop limited resistance to specific toxins, if given enough time and proper guidance. The key was understanding how to gradually introduce threatening substances in ways that strengthened rather than overwhelmed biological defense systems. Captain Reed had been promoted to ambassador and spent his time traveling between different worlds helping to establish new medical research centers. His body had become a living laboratory as scientists from dozens of species studied how human adaptation worked at the cellular level. On his latest visit to Viridia 7, Reed walked through areas that had once been deadly to any life form. The toxic fungus still grew on the walls, but now it was carefully cultivated and harvested for medical research. What had been a weapon of mass destruction was being transformed into a tool for protecting life. Emperor Thane had made good on his promise to end biological warfare. The Catherian military was being restructured from a force of conquest to a peacekeeping organization. Former weapons facilities throughout the empire were being converted to medical research centers, where alien species could learn to protect themselves from biological threats. The transition has not been easy, General Voss admitted during a meeting with Reed. Many Catherians believe that our biological superiority made us the natural rulers of the galaxy. Learning to cooperate as equals has challenged everything we thought we knew about our place in the universe. But the changes were producing results that surprised everyone involved. The cooperation between species was leading to scientific advances. That would have been impossible under the old system of biological warfare. Each species contributed unique knowledge about adaptation and survival that benefited all others. The former conquered worlds were experiencing remarkable recoveries. Populations that had been reduced to small numbers of hidden survivors were rebuilding their civilizations with new knowledge about biological defense. Many species that had been considered extinct were emerging from hiding places where they had survived Catherian attacks. Red received a message from Admiral Torres informing him that the last Catherian biological weapons facility had been successfully converted to peaceful research. The war that had threatened to destroy multiple species was officially over. But Reed knew that the real work was just beginning. The Galactic Medical Defense Initiative had identified dozens of natural biological threats throughout the galaxy that posed dangers to various species. Disease outbreaks that had previously been unstoppable could now be contained using adaptation techniques developed from human research. Toxic environments that had been uninhabitable were being transformed into productive worlds. Dr. Vasquez made an announcement that would have seemed impossible just 1 year earlier. We have successfully established permanent research stations in 37 previously uninhabitable star systems. Species that were once confined to single worlds are now expanding throughout the galaxy using adaptation protocols. The economic implications were enormous. Worlds that had been too dangerous to colonize were now being settled by species that had learned to adapt to their environments. Trade routes that had been blocked by biological hazards were opening up. The galaxy was becoming more connected and prosperous than ever before. But perhaps the most important change was cultural. Species that had lived in fear of biological extinction were learning to work together to solve common problems. The Catherian Empire had been replaced by the Galactic Cooperation Council, where all species had equal representation. Reed was preparing to return to Earth for the first time since the war began, when he received an unexpected invitation. Emperor Thane requested his presence at a special ceremony on the Catherian homeworld. Reed accepted, although he was curious about what the former emperor wanted to celebrate. The ceremony took place in the capital city of Kythos Prime, where thousands of Catherians and representatives from other species had gathered. Emperor Thane had officially abdicated his imperial title and was now serving as the elected leader of the Catherian Republic. Today we celebrate the end of the age of biological warfare and the beginning of the age of galactic cooperation, Thane announced to the assembled crowd. This transformation was made possible by a human who showed us that strength comes not from the ability to destroy life, but from the wisdom to preserve and protect it. Reed was invited to speak to the gathering, and he chose his words carefully. The war between our species began because we did not understand each other. Catherians believe that biological superiority made them invincible. Humans believe that adaptation was just about individual survival. Together we learn that true strength comes from helping others overcome the challenges that threaten all life. The ceremony concluded with a symbolic meal where representatives from every species consumed foods that had once been considered toxic to their biology. Reed ate a piece of the Viridia fungus that had started everything while Cytherean children tried earth vegetables that their parents had believed were poisonous after the ceremony. Reed visited the memorial that had been built to honor the victims of the biological wars. Millions of beings from dozens of species had died before the cooperation began. Their names were carved into walls made from materials gathered from every world that had been affected by the conflict. They died because we chose fear over understanding, Reed said as he stood before the memorial with Dr. Vasquez and Dr. Kane. Our responsibility now is to make sure their sacrifice led to something better. As Reed prepared to leave Kyphos Prime, he received one final surprise. A group of Cytherean children approached him with a gift they had made in their school. It was a small growing container holding a sample of the Viridia fungus that had been modified to be safe for consumption by any species. We wanted you to take this back to Earth, one of the children explained through a translation device. So, humans will remember that something which once brought death can be transformed to bring life. Reed accepted the gift and thought about how much had changed since that day on Viridia 7, when he had first eaten the deadly fungus. The war had ended not with a great battle or a negotiated surrender, but with a simple demonstration that life could adapt to overcome any threat. Years later, Reed would return to Viridia 7 as an old man to tend a garden where the once deadly fungus grew alongside plants from dozens of different worlds. Children from many species would come to learn about the Great Adaptation War and how cooperation had replaced conquest as the foundation of galactic civilization. The garden became a symbol of what was possible when species chose to work together rather than destroy each other. And at the center of it all grew the humble fungus that had once been a weapon of mass destruction, but had become a reminder that even the deadliest threats could be transformed into sources of life and hope.